The stakes couldn't be higher for GM. The Silverado is the company's cash cow, the lion's share of its profits. General Motors has one chance not to mess this up lest they end up poisoning their most profitable watering hole. So, that all being said, let's take a look at what they've cooked up. This is the 2024 Chevy Silverado EV. Let's get right to the meat and potatoes of the Chevy Silverado EV, the powertrain specs. Under the body here is a battery, the capacity of which GM is not saying at the moment, but it will provide a GM estimated range of approximately 400 miles on a single charge. So what can you do with all those electrons? Well, at the bare minimum, you can warp some pavement, because according to GM, in its RST trim, the Silverado EV will produce at least 664 horsepower and 780 pound-feet of torque in its wide-open watts mode. Yes, that does spell WOW mode. I don't believe GM is contractually obligated to include all these cutesy acronyms, nor do I believe it's a World of Warcraft reference, but you never know. Truck stuff should come pretty easily to the Silverado EV and its RST trim as well. GM's internal estimates currently project up to 10,000 pounds of towing capacity and 1,300 pounds of payload. Despite the truck's size, it should handle pretty well too, thanks to the inclusion of four-wheel steering. Sadly though, that does not include the neat crab walking trick that the GMC Hummer EV has. Now let's talk charging. To get those 400 miles back after doing all that truck stuff, the Silverado EV boasts charging capabilities up to 350 kilowatts, which is about the most you can get from a charger right now. That allowed about 100 miles of range in roughly 10 minutes, if you can find a working charger that powerful. Power delivery can go the other way too. The Silverado EV offers up to 10 outlets that can provide a net 10.2 kilowatts of electric power for campsites, job sites, you name it. But power tools aren't all the Silverado EV can power. In fact, this truck is capable of charging an entirely different electric vehicle using an available accessory charging cord. As you might expect from an electric pickup truck with a 2024 model year, there is quite a bit of tech sandwiched in this thing. The first thing your eyes will probably notice as you move through the interior is the honkin' 17-inch LCD infotainment screen. But if that's not enough real estate for you, don't worry, there's another 11 inches of screen just under the horizon by way of a driver information display. When it comes to safety systems, both variants of Silverado EV will get Chevy Safety Assist Standard. The suite of active and passive driver aids includes automatic emergency braking, forward collision warning, pedestrian detection, lane keep assist, lane departure warning, and automatic high beams. Now you might be saying to yourself, "Self, that list sure doesn't have adaptive cruise control on it." And you'd be right, but also wrong. Don't fret, because the Silverado EV also comes packing Super Cruise. If you haven't become familiar with this system, which permits hands-free operation on pre-mapped stretches of American highway, it really knocks the tedium out of a long road trip, and I think Silverado EV owners will be happy to have it. Now that we've taken you through some of the more granular details of the 24 Silverado EV, let's take a step back and zoom out and discuss design. Now it is pretty clear where the front end draws a little bit of its inspiration from. If you've ever seen a Bolt EV, you'd recognize this full-width LED bar. In truck form, I actually think it accentuates the width pretty well and gives you a hint along this cut line here that there is in fact a frunk, and that it has a nice low opening to make it easy to kind of load stuff in. Coming around to the side here, you might now notice that the proportions aren't exactly what you'd expect from a modern pickup truck. Owing to the fact that there is no 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 14 liter engine under the hood, the overhang is about as short as it can be, which will probably make it a little easier to park at the mall. Now, as you're going along, you may not get an idea of the scale of this truck, but it is large. I'm not 4 feet tall, I'm 6 feet tall, and these are 24-inch wheels here to kind of give you an idea of just the sheer girth of this thing. Moving along the side, I actually really like the design. It's not very overwrought. There is a little bit of kind of subtlety along the door panels there, and I kind of like the way the window moves up on the back door, but really there's nothing too crazy along here. Although, my favorite part, and this is my favorite part, is the way the D-pillar kind of cascades down. Some people might say Hummer EV. I personally think Chevy Avalanche. You be the judge. Moving around to the back, we get to pick up just a few more elements of the GM family design language. Here in the taillights, you may see a little bit of Silverado, especially in the way the element is shaped as you're looking at it directly from the back. Yeah, the clear lens and construction is a little different, but this is kind of one of the ways to let you know that this is in fact part of the Silverado family. Moving further back, it's no surprise that GM's multi-flex tailgate is present and accounted for on the RST. But what is perhaps the single most interesting part of the entire exterior of the 2024 Silverado EV is actually in the bed. Multi-Flex Midgate is the newest creation on the Silverado EV. Available only on the RST trim, it is basically a back door between the bed and the cabin. The second row inside has a 40-60 split, at which point you can fold the seat up, fold the door down, and get a heck of a lot more space. Now, how much space am I talking? All right, let's go through some numbers. If everything is closed, the tailgate and the midgate, you get about 5 feet 11 inches of storage. If you open the midgate and keep the tailgate closed, that number expands to a hair over 9 feet. And in its maximum configuration, which is where the midgate is open and the tailgate is open and set to its load stop, you get 10 feet 10 inches of stuff back there. That's pretty darn crazy. Now that we've taken you through the exterior of the Silverado EV, let's slide on inside, but not fully inside because I'm not allowed in there. Now, when GM said that the Silverado EV is all new, they really meant it. There is no carbon copy piece of anything in here aside from maybe like the trailer brake controller. Otherwise, the design is clean sheet. Other than the 2 screens in the middle, which kind of join together, everything else is nice and low. You have an interesting use of mixed materials. It feels like a good mix of carish and truckish, so to speak. And the cabin should feel a little extra carish thanks to one gargantuan fixed glass roof above, which should add a little bit of headspace and make the whole cabin feel a little more airy. Now, if you're wondering why I've been referring to the RST trim so much, it's because that right now there are currently 2 variants of Silverado EV on offer. The RST trim is the consumer-focused trim, but there will also be a WT, a work truck aimed at more fleet-focused buyers, or the Ford Lightning Pro. And what's funny is that that will actually arrive in the fall of 23, whereas this guy shows up in the spring. A lot of things are the same between the two. For example, RST and WT share the same battery pack. And although GM isn't saying how big the pack is, both trucks have an estimated 400-mile range. WT can accept the same fast charging as RST, and it too can backfeed power to tools or other EVs. And there's 4-wheel steering on offer here as well. So now let's talk about what's different. The WT's output is a little lower, promising up to 510 horsepower and 615 pound-feet of torque. Towing capacity is a little lower too at an estimated 8,000 pounds, while payload is about 100 pounds down at 1,200. But those of you looking to haul a lot of stuff shouldn't fret. Later on, GM plans to unveil a model with a maximum towing capacity of 20,000 pounds. Usually, you'd have to upgrade to a 3,500 model medium-duty pickup for that kind of capability. Alrighty, it's comparison time. I know some of you are eager to hear how the Silverado EV stacks up against a certain rectilinear quote-unquote truck from a certain manufacturer, but since its release is still very much up in the air, we'll be focusing on how the Silverado EV stacks up against its hometown competition, the Ford F-150 Lightning. GM's internal estimates for the Silverado EV trump the F-150 Lightning's estimated specs in both standard range and extended range formats, roughly 30% higher than Ford's best estimates at the moment. The Lightning can't charge as quickly either, as it's limited to just 150 kilowatts versus the Chevy's 350. Now when it comes to truck stuff, it's more of a mixed bag. While the Silverado EV's 10,000 pound tow rating estimate is in line with the F-150 Lightning extended range, the Chevy simply can't put as much in its bed, offering 1,300 pounds of payload compared to Ford's 2,000 pound maximum on the standard range. Ford's onboard power delivery does lag behind Chevy's though, at a net 9.6 kilowatts versus Big Bowtie's 10.2. Chevy also wins on screen size, with its premier infotainment system offered up on a whopping 17-inch screen. Now the Ford isn't very far behind at 15.5 inches, and we know Ford's system is great from our experiences with the Mustang Mach-E's portrait display, so we'll have to wait until we get some playtime in the Silverado to figure out which system is truly better for the owner. Both trucks offer standard safety suites with largely the same collection of individual components, whether it's automatic high beams or lane departure warning. But GM can no longer claim outright superiority in the highway road trip game, because while the Silverado EV does come with Super Cruise, so too does the F-150 Lightning come with Ford's own Blue Cruise. Now I would say let's compare frunks because both trucks do in fact have them, but Chevy is still hard at work finalizing the design of its frunk to maximize interior volume. Whether or not it matches up to Ford's 14 cubic foot Mega Power frunk has yet to be seen, but they are certainly trying to hit that number.
That leaves us with the cost.
I'm sure you've already figured out that something this technologically impressive and physically massive wouldn't be cheap, and you're right. The Silverado EV RST will start at $105,000 when it goes on sale. The work truck variant, which goes on sale earlier, does not yet have a price, and the first year's allocation is already all but spoken for. So if you're looking for something a bit more pedestrian in the $40,000 to $50,000 range, you'll have to wait a few years yet, or you could hop on the Ford Lightning reservation list since Ford is making affordable electric trucks right off the bat. It's pretty clear from this price gulf that GM and Ford are targeting different customers to start. So when can all this cool stuff land in your driveway? Well, if you're watching this video on January 5th, the day it came out, the answer is soon-ish. Not really, but kind of. The reservation books are open right now for RST models, and both RST and WT will be built at GM's Factory Zero in Detroit. As for when the car will actually show up, work truck models will be coming out first in the spring of 2023, followed by RST in the fall. Now that does give Ford a year-long head start with the F-150 Lightning, so GM had better make it worth it.